sun, in order to escape from the captors. This was so because the pursuers didn't expect it, and even today, don't expect that the refugees chose for themselves a dying or passing sun, which will only exist for a few billion years and which only had 3 habitable planets in its system, one of which could only be transitionally inhabited for a short time, namely Mars, while another, either Malona or Phaeton, was destroyed by its inhabitants, which resulted in the asteroid belt. Moreover, there was still the fact that the Sirius regions, from where the refugees broke out, were in a different space-time configuration, and the refugees settled in another space-time plane, even in our space and our time, which was a foreign area to the Sirians and which couldn't be found by them up to this day, for on the one hand, there are simply too many of the most diverse space-time configurations in the entire universe, and on the other hand, the Sirians didn't have the Henok technology of the space-time exchange. But now, 2 specific questions about this. First of all, do the distant descendants of the Sirians from their other space-time configuration, or from their other space-time plane, still presently search for the refugees of Henok's line, whose most distant descendants are some of today's Earth people? And secondly, are the distant descendants of these Sirians in a position today to penetrate into other space-time configurations? And actually, this still gives rise to a third question that is related to this. Why, actually, was a solar system searched for, which only had a few inhabitable planets? Quetzal says the danger of the pursuit of the refugees, or rather their distant descendants, by the distant descendants of the former inhabitants of Sirius is no longer existent because over many thousands of years, the disposition of the Sirians has changed for the better, and so now, they live in peace and without ambitions for power. Today, their aspirations are more focused on consciousness-related and spiritual progress than just on power, revenge, and retaliation, in consequence of which also everything that had happened at the earliest times with the genetically manipulated ones and their work and escape was ordered into oblivion by a council's decision. But still, they also developed their technology further in every form. Consequently, they also became capable of changing from their space-time plane into another. But unfortunately, this was to the advantage of a small group of diehards who had taken over the old hatred and thoughts of revenge as well as the retaliatory desires of the old Sirians from generation to generation and also further maintained them. But today, these are now just 63 of their human beings who continue in the traditional hatred and try to cause harm to the most distant descendant of the Sirius refugees, even in the way that they try to transport you from life and thereby make your mission and the teaching of the Spirit impossible. Unfortunately, they also arrived into the possession of the technology that enables them to change into the most diverse space-time planes, so even into this one, in which the Sol system exists, which they have, indeed, found after centuries of searching. They try to cause harm to you as well as to all those around you and to the teaching and the mission and elsewhere, namely by intimidating and threatening the Earth people who have observed our beam ships or the ones of other extraterrestrial visitors to Earth or who have found any proofs of their existence. Through these hateful elements that cooperated with the Giza intelligences, human beings of the Earth were also injured or kidnapped, etc., but this only occurred rarely. Moreover, these renegades and men in black, as we also call them, and these have nothing to do with the so-called men in black, who are of earthly origin and, thus, who are Secret Service-driven Earth people, strive to induce real visions and hallucinations through apparatus-driven, suggestive impulses in Earth people who are susceptible to these. Their repertoire ranges from fake sightings and observations as well as alleged abductions up to simulated contacts and sexual intercourse with extraterrestrials, from which alleged pregnancies occur that, if they already appear, are caused quite normally with an earthly partner or by artificial manipulation of a medical nature or one's own nature. Also through these extraterrestrial men in black, the illusion is produced in susceptible Earth people that somehow, through carelessness, etc., things penetrated into their body unnoticed, such as the incidence of metal fragments or small projectiles, etc., implants of extraterrestrial forces and beings, which is absurd, of course. Since these Sirius renegades are too small in their numbers to inflict really major damage on Earth and its inhabitants, they have invested in their hatred, in order to create confusion in manifold forms all over the Earth among the people. Moreover, as I already said, they try to destroy the teaching of the Spirit and your mission, and indeed even by instigating unstable Earth people to kill you or to make it impossible for you through lies, deceit, and slander, and to represent you as a liar, swindler, forger, and fraud, which you will still experience, unfortunately, even in your own family, as I have seen through our look into the future. Unfortunately, we aren't able to catch these extraterrestrial men in black elements because they always vanish into a space-time plane whose coordinates we can't detect and can't register, for quite obviously, these Sirius renegades have a coordinate distorter or otherwise have a way to distort the coordinate data, whereby we can't capture them and can't get a hold of the culprit. In addition, the elements are extremely vigilant and clever, so it could take years or decades before we get them on track and dissuade them from their actions. We have to wait until they make a mistake or until our scientists find a way to decipher their coordinates upon the disappearance of the renegades into another space-time plane. Billy says then we can still exercise some patience. Let's talk about something else. Although we've already talked about this several times, I would like a specific answer from you. As Patar said and showed to me, there is a lot of water on and also under the surface Mars in the form of ice, mostly very close to the surface of Mars, whereby the South Pole is of special importance in this regard. As Patar explained, however, not all ice consists of water but also of other materials. Now, the question about this is whether you have foresight as to whether this water can one day be used by the Earth people, once they eventually colonize Mars and can, so to speak, bring it back to life. And in the coming time, will the fact of the presence of the enormous canyons and black sand dunes and water on Mars be discovered by probes, if such should be sent to the Red Planet and reach this at all? Quetzal says that will be the case several times in the coming time in reference to the water, namely that large occurrences of water in the form of ice and snow can be proven by probes on Mars. But the final certainty will first be attained at the beginning of the third millennium, and to be sure, by a Mars probe that will be called 2001 Mars Odyssey, as our look into the future has revealed. Billy says, and will it also become clear through this then that Mars once supported life and that, in fact, exotic life exists on the planet? I mean microbes and the like. Quetzal says no, that will not yet be the case at that time. The time for that won't be until much later. Billy says, and how does it stand with the storms on Mars? Will these also be investigated then, and will it also be discovered that there are something like flashes of lightning up there? And since we're already at it through the powerful flashes of lightning on the good old Earth, which shoot vertically into the air at around 100 kilometers per second, radio waves arise with such high frequencies that through these, the very sparsely settled air molecules are brought to radiating illumination. Is this a specific feature that only appears on Earth, or does this phenomenon also occur on other planets? Quetzal says this likewise applies to other worlds, both those that are of the same nature as the Earth and those that are of a different nature. Billy says, you mean in terms of the various planetary spheres, if I understand you correctly. By that, I mean the atmosphere or troposphere, stratosphere, stratopause, mesosphere, mesopause, thermosphere, exosphere or dissipation sphere, the nutrosphere, homosphere, heterosphere, and ionosphere, as well as the geosphere and biosphere, the lithosphere, respectively the Earth's mantle layer and the Earth's crust and the inner asthenosphere, etc. Quetzal says, you astonish me. Billy says it's only half as bad, it's all just school knowledge and book knowledge. But tell me, you recently said that around the turn of the millennium, a new space station would be built, which should orbit the Earth at a high